Welcome to the Profitable Husband Podcast, where we explore the untold stories of men building empires with their partners. My name's Will Kai. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Mason Littlejohn, a huge player in the media buying space. Mason and I actually met at an e-commerce dinner a couple of years ago. Then I joined Mason's program. He's helped me scale rapidly using paid traffic, but the story goes way deeper than that. Welcome to the episode, Mason. I'm super excited to have you here.
Super excited to be here, Willow. Thanks for having me. This is my first podcast.
Heck
so
yeah, let's go.
I'm super excited that it's, the first one is with you.
Heck yeah. So let's take it back. So now you're a media buyer. You have spent over $300 million on advertising. Way back before all of that, how'd you get into this?
Yeah, so I originally thought I was going to be working, as a hedge fund manager, a portfolio manager in finance. That's what I was trained and studied in college.
Okay.
However, I didn't really end up working out. I didn't kind of do the requirements in college, the internships, all that sort of stuff to qualify for those sorts of roles. So no one wanted to hire me. And so what ended up happening is came across my email was something about a media buyer, a Facebook ad media buyer, which I had no idea what that was.
Okay.
But essentially what they said was, if you're good with numbers and you're creative, like, you should apply. And so I ended up applying to this job at this Facebook ads agency in 2016.
Okay.
And got hired. They made me take like a math test too, which was interesting, like Excel, whatnot. And within like 2 weeks of being there, ended up becoming the best media buyer there.
Damn.
Better than everyone that had been there for years. And,
Okay.
and that kind of made people not like me because, I was just kind of like this young gun, just gunslinger that was just like loved it. Cause it was kind of like, especially at that time with Facebook ads, it was kind of like day trading in a way where you would just like, every day was like, you would be jumping budgets up and down. And so it was this really exciting time to be a media buyer. And I was just naturally like, I fell in love with it right away. And so that was kind of the beginning of my journey as a media buyer.
I love that. And the media buying portion of buying ads, controlling ad space, and then also optimizing budgets to achieve optimal return, I guess, is the basis of the job, but it's such a supportive piece to any business that's growing. What were the kinds of businesses that you were working with at the beginning, and then what did that turn into?
Yeah, so because I, had such early success, the company I worked at, they kind of had me work on everything. And so there's two pieces to media buying. There's like the e-com direct to consumer side, right? And then there's also like lead generation, which is like service-based businesses. Yep. And so in the beginning, I worked on both. So I worked on like mortgage offers, debt refinancing, credit repair, very direct response lead gen style stuff, which was, it used to be big on Meta. And then e-com. So I actually worked on Fashion Nova. I worked on Pretty Little Thing when these brands were relatively newer. Yeah. General Assembly, which is a big, info product course company. That was when they were kind of a newer, bigger startup. So I kind of had my hand both in like the financial services niche and also like direct to consumer e-commerce.
Okay. What was it for you that what was that moment or that experience that made you realize that the skills that you were building doing media buying were bigger than just a job, but were actually going to be able to be the vehicle to you creating your dreams, creating or achieving what you were looking to achieve?
Yeah, I just saw, with all the different brands or offers I worked on, just how like quickly things could change. Meaning, one day this brand's only doing a couple thousand a day, and then within a month they're doing $100K a day to $1 million a month, right? It just happens so fast. And then I just realized, wow, like this skill is something that can not only change other people's lives, other brands' lives, other businesses, journeys, but just my own. I was like, wow, like this could be something way bigger than I originally thought.
It's kind of like it's like a weird way of saying it, but it's kind of like a godly position to be a media buyer in that you're able to turn I want to say nothing into something. Really,
Yeah.
it's a lot of money into more money, but like that role to play in a business, to play in even just like thinking about the founders, to play in their lives, that you're able to take an amount of money, take an asset and to turn it into something greater, even in just one day's time. How does that feel? Like that's a crazy fucking thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's you. Yeah, it definitely strokes your ego when you're good at it,
Yeah.
because like it's in some ways it's like alchemy, right? Where you're like just transmuting these, ideas into money,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of it starts with an idea, with something, a lot of strategies kind of just come in my head, and then I'm like, let's do this, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden turns into lots of money very quickly. And so yeah, and in some ways you're kind of a secret weapon to businesses, and that's kind of how I position myself, and just with my coaching program and my agency, I just try to be that, X factor, and
Yeah.
show people what's actually possible, because a lot of people, they don't realize how far you can take things with the right media buyer or with the right advertising strategies. And
Totally.
so there's a lot of power in it. You can use it for good or use it
Yeah.
for like, selling bad products, right? A lot of
Yeah.
people do. There's some, people that do use it for not the best things, but there's a lot of great things that can
Yeah.
come out of advertising, and a lot of lives that can be changed, with even what you and Becca have done, the lives you guys have changed by, pushing your courses with ads, right?
Yeah.
You would not be able to reach as many people with, so it's a beautiful thing, really.
It is. It's honestly crazy thinking about, like, so for everybody that's listening, I scaled Beckaloon Education up to 3,000 students completely organically. Then I was really interested in kind of taking this little bit more masculine approach of like, let's get a sales team. Let's get these fucking ads going, like all this stuff. Becca took some convincing, honestly, to get all of those things up and running. And then I started looking for media buyers, all of these things. We get connected at a Clavio dinner,
Yeah.
which was wild to think about because this is like 3-ish, maybe 3.5 years ago. And I meet Mason, and Mason's like, I took you for this like stud in the room, spending all this money. Like I was like, man, this guy I feel like could be a really helpful piece of my journey in exploring the media buying world without this piece of fear or like maybe hesitation that I had going into it, because I had talked to agencies and I had talked to lots of individuals that felt like they were going to be able to spend money really quickly, but maybe not actually get like a return on it. And so when I found you and your philosophy of being like a helper to brands like myself, rather than needing to be the one with the huge agency fees and things like that, I was so attracted to working together, to building a relationship, and also just enamored or fascinated by what you were doing at such a large scale. So at that time, you were working for Ruggable, big name brand, scaling super quickly. What was that like for you in working on a team that grew so quick?
Yeah, so I guess a little bit of background. I was one of the founding employees at Ruggable, meaning I was like employee number 5.
Wow.
Our CMO at the time wasn't even a CMO yet. She was considered the director of marketing. I was her first hire. So I did everything at Ruggable. I ran all their ads. They at the time they didn't have email marketing. I built their email marketing. So I just kind of built out the whole, retention and paid media function there. And when I had gotten there, they'd only done. I got there early 2018. They'd only ever done $1 million in revenue when I got there.
1 million.
1 million. So 2017 they did 1 million. They got a little bit of seed funding, and they were trying to hire A players, right? And so, like, I think it's a God thing. God put me in this situation where the founder was like, hey, we're trying to, scale this thing to like hundreds of millions of dollars. We think it has this potential. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. Like,
Say less.
say less. Let's say less. And it sounded insane at the time.
Yeah.
But I had this weird confidence that this was going to be something massive. So fast forward to kind of when we met, I mean, I think it was 2022 early, maybe.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, we had just in 2021 did our first $500 million in revenue in America, right? North America. So
Bigger revenue outside of America or just selling in the US?
that was just in the US. We had just done like 525 million right before I met you.
Yeah.
And then we ended up doing 2 more years of $500 million a year plus in North America. I also launched them into the UK. I launched them into Europe. I launched them into Australia, and we scaled to 8 figures in all of those geos in less than 12 months. And But yeah, it's wild. When I started there, I was like, I was like an entrepreneur. Like
Yeah.
I basically could do whatever I wanted. They were like, hey, if you can hit these goals, then spend as much as you want, right?
Okay.
And so I was kind of just like let loose to just run amok
Yeah.
and run wild. Obviously, over time, we had to hire and hire for functions, and so I ended up passing off a lot of the stuff I was doing, like email marketing. We ended up hiring somebody, Google ads, Pinterest ads, everything we ended up hiring. I started having my own team as well, but
Okay.
I was able to see the evolution of like this tiny little thing just becoming this like behemoth of a business.
From a super fucking high level, what was the evolution from going from 1 million to 1 billion?
I call it, I've said this I've talked about it with other people before, but I call it like the build for forever framework, where like Ruggable was like trying to become this behemoth.
Okay.
And a lot of people, when they build something, they kind of just half-ass it, right? They're like, oh, we'll just do a little bit here, a little
Yeah.
bit there, a little bit here. Like for everything we did, like we went like full tilt. Like if we're gonna do email marketing, we're building out every single flow imaginable,
Yeah.
right? If we're doing Google, we're doing every single campaign. Like we were building a machine.
Yeah.
Each part of the business was a machine, and that's how we thought about everything. And
Yeah.
so, once you build each machine, and it's this big machine, well, this is something that just prints money every
Yeah.
single day. It's something that you can leave it on its own and it's still going, right?
Right.
So that's the one thing I learned there, was like you have to build a machine.
Yeah.
And think, let's build, when you're thinking about building something, like you don't think about, oh, what's going to work now only. Like what can we build now that's going to still work 5 years from now? And so that's how we approached everything.
Yeah.
And when you do that from the beginning, your growth just will skyrocket because you're light years ahead of your competition.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the main thing. And I take that with me everywhere I go, is like, all right, how can any brand I work on, what can we build right away that's going to have impact years down the road? And the best part about this, if you build a machine, it's also a sellable asset, right? Yeah. If you have a piecemeal thing that is just like not thrown together thoughtfully and it's inconsistent, no one's going to want to buy that, right?
Yeah.
So machines are what people want to buy, something that they can just buy and it just does the same thing every day.
Yeah.
So
I've always loved that about the work that I've seen you do, in that when we were working like Black Friday year before last, I remember you showing us ads that were like, oh yeah, this ad's been running for 2 years. We've spent 5 million, like a crazy number on this one ad. I'll throw a new headline, do things like that. And I'm like, that's fucking crazy. Like this one ad that might be like a super relatively like basic static or something that's just so simple that you've figured out how to literally print money. It's crazy. What was it like actually like digging a little bit deeper? What was it emotionally like being a part of days where you were spending maybe more money than like you had maybe ever seen in person, or like just figures that were so much bigger than what most people, kind of deal with?
Yeah, I think it's just, I'm in this weird space now where like I'm pretty sure I'm like addicted to advertising, meaning like I'm addicted to spending money on ads.
Yeah.
And I think it happened for Ruggable. Like, when I first started there, we were spending like $250 a day.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, fast forward, I was spending like literally every day, like $200,000 to $300,000 a day.
That's like a fucking Ferrari.
Exactly. Ferrari, like Lambo, whatever you want to. And most people would be scared shitless, right?
Yeah.
But I had been there the whole time. Like I had built this thing, so I just became numb to it. It became normal. Like if I was like spending $50K a day, to me, it was like, that's not even that much money. I'm like, wow, we're not doing well, right?
Yeah.
We're only spending $50K a day, right? So I became so numb to it, and in a lot of ways, you said like before, like you just feel like a G, a god.
Yeah.
Like I'm literally the guy, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where even now, when a lot of these other guys with other brands, like I was doing this stuff 3 years ago, and a lot of the people just don't comprehend that the things we were doing, you know. And so, but yeah, it's just amazing that I can bring all that knowledge now and that confidence
Yeah.
to other, like, because like you said, you're like, not many people have the confidence, like, yeah, if we spend this, we'll generate this, right?
Yeah.
Or some people are like, well, we can do it, but we might not get a return. Where I'm like extremely confident. If I look at a business,
Yeah.
I can be like, yeah, we're gonna make you money.
Yeah.
And so being able to have that and bring that to other businesses, I think is just so valuable, because it kind of unlocks this new vision for brands of like where they can actually, how far they can take it.
I think that that's something that's a nuanced piece of your success, actually, having watched you now build a super profitable coaching program, in that you have the confidence, but you don't exude ego. Where a lot of guys that I think of agencies that have spent hundreds of millions, like, you get on and you can like taste the ego. You can taste the, like, I don't know, almost like lack of alignment commonly. And I think that people are really attracted to you in that you bring that crazy experience and confidence without the I'm going to tell you what to do and you're going to do it, and if you don't, you're stupid type of vibe that's so common in an agency. What is the most amount you've spent in a day?
1.5 million.
What was that? What was that on Ruggable?
Yeah, that was Black Friday 2023.
And what kind of ROAS were you getting on that?
I think in platform was like around a 7 or 8 ROAS. I think that day specifically, we did about 30 million in one day.
So that's more than $1 million an hour.
Yeah,
that's fucking wild.
It was insane. I think we sold, I don't know, 50,000 rugs that day.
I remember getting on to a Black Friday meeting. So for some context, Black Friday the year before last, that was like one of our biggest sale weekends. A lot of, honestly, thanks to you. We hit our first 100K day. 2 days later, I hit my first 300K day, and I literally felt like I was printing money. It was fucking crazy. And I was on 4 meetings a day with my assistant. We were on like 2 meetings in the morning, midnight, all of these things, checking spend, all of that. But I loved getting on with you at like 10 a.m. You're like, yeah, I've already spent like $1 million. Like, so fucking wild. With all of this, feeling like there's like this essence of God bringing you to opportunities, also being in this like crazy position to be able to create fruit from like relatively nothing. Where do you feel like faith has like played a role in your journey, in believing in yourself, believing in opportunities, anything like that?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, it kind of goes back to where like I felt like I never thought I was going to be doing this, and I kind of fell into this, and it just seems like it's been guided in a lot of ways just by God and my abilities. Like I have a very analytical mind. I love numbers. I can look at numbers and instantly see what to do next, how to multiply them, right? Make them better. But at the same time, I'm a creative. I love art, fashion, all that sort of stuff. And so I kind of like, God put me in this position where most people only have one or the other, and that's kind of where I'm able to not only work with the numbers, but I can tell you what ads to make, video scripts you should be writing, what ad angles. So I kind of like had that from the beginning, and I think that I just fell into this perfect industry. And then with Ruggable, like I could never have, like, I don't know how I got so lucky where all the skills that I learned there now have made me able to help any business, right? And I truly, it sounds so cliche of like being able to do work, your work actually having an impact, but that's like literally what I do every day. I'm like having an impact on lives. And I think, you know, what prompted me to leave Ruggable was, you know, being inspired, I would say, by God to, hey, launch this agency, launch this coaching program. You can help way more brands even than on the agency side. And then that's, you know, I met you, I met all these people, and it's like, things have just happened in ways that are beyond comprehension, where my coaching program, I think it'll be 2 years this summer. We're almost at over 100 brands in there. So, and that's without even running like paid ads, without, it's just all kind of organically. And so I think the proof is kind of just in the story so far, and that kind of be divinely inspired, I would say.
Yeah,
so.
I love that. Now working with 100 brands in that program, you have your agency clients. I'm curious, what do you feel the biggest impact from? Like, is it a huge $1 million day, or is it helping somebody in the program hit their first 10K month or day? Or like, what is it that you help people unlock that you feel the biggest impact from?
Yeah, I think the biggest things are when, like, I've had a few people in the program that have quit their 9 to 5.
Mm,
I've gotten a new warehouse,
yeah.
gotten a new apartment. I mean, I've got these texts of just like, I couldn't have done this without you. Um, I had another one where someone in the program who basically said they were borderline like suicidal. They were working a job they hated, and that my program more or less saved them
Mm-hmm.
from the other path, right?
Yeah.
And so those are the biggest things for me. I mean, I think for them it might be
Yeah.
the money, like those big first days, but for me the biggest moments for me are when these lives are changed. They're not having to work a 9 to 5 ever again. Those
Yeah.
those are the biggest moments for me that make me know I'm doing the right thing, I'm on the right path, and I think that's why this program is grown so much organically, because it's real people
Yeah.
and we're making real impact, and then there's like real authentic stories coming out of it. and
Yeah.
and like you mentioned, like, I really care about people, and I really try to only bring good people into the program as well that truly want to like build great businesses, great
Yeah.
products, great brands. So
Yeah. I think that impact is very real, because I think even as somebody who's been in the program thinks about money as like a money
yeah.
motivated person, I think it's so easy to actually attach money to being like my North Star. That's what I'm working for. But then I think you actually have these experiences. Like for me, that Black Friday weekend, it was something that I worked so hard to get to, and then I achieved, and then I achieved the next goal. But then interestingly, you kind of wake up the next day and you're like, that was it. Like,
Yeah.
it's like you realize actually after hitting those money goals that while yes, you can chase the next one, it's really about the lifestyle, because you wake up the next day and whether you have more money in your bank account or whatever, nothing is actually different. Like
Yeah.
literally nothing other than what you internally inside of yourself, inside of your relationship, and inside of like your home and your lifestyle, you can make changes with the money, with the impact. And I love that you brought up like people being able to quit their jobs, people being able to make those leaps and bounds of, I don't know, upgrades, if you will, in their life because of the vehicle of advertising. I think that's so cool to see. With that going from when we met, you were working at Ruggable. How much were you making then?
Well, yeah, I was a brokey back then. I was a brokey. No, compared to I was making 6 figures a year. I had stock options that I thought were like awesome.
Sick.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm gonna be so rich. But yeah,
What's it been like for you and your relationship and your life going from a 6-figure job to 6-figure months?
I see that again. A relationship with
What's it been like for you, like internally, and with your relationship, like with Tay and things like that, from you going like as a human from making 6 figures a year to 6 figures a month?
yeah, I think it's just been transformational, where a lot of things that you worry about before kind of just go to the wayside. And I think in some ways, I feel some ways I have responsibility, a bigger responsibility than ever before, to be a better person. Where if all this stuff happened to me when I was much younger, like, I probably wouldn't have been a good steward of everything I've been given now.
Yep.
But now it's just like I think about legacy, I think about just my family, even my parents, and that what I can do with this newfound resources,
Absolutely.
success. And so, and just like kind of the whole dynamic of like changing your family tree, like I really take that very seriously.
I love that.
And my family, I mean, my parents, I don't come from entrepreneurs, I don't come from any of this, and the money I'm making to them is probably incomprehensible. I'll be
Yeah.
honest, I don't think they even know. I've never really told them. And so yeah, I just try to make sure that I still be the same Mason,
Yep.
and be a good steward of it,
Yep.
and also just bless people as much as possible with now that I've been given so much.
Yeah.
So.
I love that, and I really respect that. what do you feel like, have there been any pieces internally for you that you've had to either like heal or work through to kind of have what you have now?
Yeah, something I haven't actually talked really with anyone about is I had somewhat of a, checkered past with addiction issues. I'm bipolar, and I was on meds for a long time. I went through a rocky period, and I would say I had some, well, more or less would say like trauma of some sort,
Yeah.
right? So I was in therapy with a really, she ended up becoming more like my life coach at the end,
Cool.
but we worked through a lot of stuff. Um, like did a lot of EMDR therapy. So I worked through a lot of just like past things that she was like, yo, this is holding you back from like making more money. Like you're
Yeah.
like these limiting beliefs that you may have been brought down for you from family or whatever. And
Yeah.
so I worked through a lot of stuff literally for years. And I think that was a big, big play. And she also was, Christian, and she had like a godly perspective about therapy too. So but she really was like, hey, if you want to get to this next level where you're not, because I had this pattern of self-sabotaging
Okay.
that kind of just kept happening, where like I felt like maybe I didn't deserve success, or
Yeah.
that like I didn't believe, oh, your family's not millionaires, you
Yeah.
can't do this,
Yeah.
right? And so I had to work through these things, and weirdly enough, like I worked through this stuff, and very soon after I started just, things just started really taking off. And
So you did the work before the big takeoff
yeah,
happened.
I didn't realize that what was happening at the time.
Okay.
Because she was pushing me to like, this EMDR therapy, you're like going into past memories and like
Yeah.
just stuff you don't want to relive, right? And so, but she pushed me. She's like, trust me, just do it, do it, do it, do it. And I would sometimes I almost like, I was in the parking lot like, I'm not gonna go in, but I ended up doing it.
Yeah.
And now looking back, I didn't realize how pivotal it was, but it was monumental, and like literally releasing those like blocks in your generational, limiting beliefs,
Yeah.
that were holding you back. So
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I grew up with a lot of trauma too on both sides of my family, and also just like self-inflicted. Even.
yeah, same.
Got into partying really young and was just kind of obsessed with this like sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle. I watch like now I'll see a movie like 13 or Kids and be like, damn, like low key that was me. But I honestly, I think even had some ego that kind of pushed me to not feel responsible of doing a lot of that work until actually finding a level of success. And I think that that's something that on this podcast I really want to talk about, of that being the male in the relationship, being a supporter in our relationships with our wives, but also being in a role where we have a lot of power and a lot of responsibility to create impact. The healing of those things, I think, is really important. And I'm proud of you and me for doing that pre-children, because I think it's really important to try and, like you said, to try and curve that family tree to pass on positive things rather than maybe some of the negatives that we inherited to our kids in the future. I think that the therapy is an interesting one, because I think that it's a nuanced piece of finding success, that you might find yourself like laying in a therapist's office, like crying about like, oh, this is all like so hard, like all this shit. But at the same time, I truly don't believe that you can continue to grow without ebbing and flowing and really actually seeking out that help, because a lot of people that are going to be listening to this, a lot of people just in reality don't seek out that help. And I think that it's honestly holding back a lot of people, a lot of relationships. I'm curious, what did that look like? Like away from money and things like that, what did that look like in terms of positive changes within your like household, within your marriage, things like that?
Yeah, I just think I started to take a step back, and when situations would happen, or arguments, whatever, even at work, at home, and just realizing like these, your first reactions to a lot of things are more or less driven by, something you've learned in the past,
Yeah.
or it's being triggered by something that happened. If someone says a certain thing to you, and then the way you feel is because someone's made you feel that way before, and so
Yeah.
you're naturally want to respond a certain way. And so that which might not be beneficial to you,
Yep.
but beneficial to the relationship, and might be actually self-sabotaging, right? And so that's what really I started to take a step back and really like sit in my feelings, not just react to things, and also just really being very aware of like wins, like big wins. I want to go party. I just want to be crazy. I just want to like, and when it's like counteracting my success, right? So
Yeah.
I had a lot of times where I would get big wins and would just destroy myself partying, other things, right? Which is just like not in alignment with the path I was on, right? And
Yeah.
so she kind of helped me realize, hey, you don't have to do that anymore. Like you don't have to. You deserve this. It's okay to like keep doing the right thing, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, not saying you can't drink and whatever, you know, but I'm an extreme personality. Like if
Yeah.
I do something, I like to go.
I mean, we just went snowboarding. I think you had like 4 Red Bulls in the day.
yeah, I wasn't even drinking. I was drinking a little bit, but yeah, I'm like the type of person that like I love caffeine. I love going hard, and so I just kind of learn to kind of take a step back and like really think about who do you really want to be, and you don't have to continue to react the same way. You don't have to pass on these negative things that may have been inflicted upon you, right? So
and that maybe could have gone back like multiple generations, because I think that was one of my pieces that I was really able to see myself, is that I felt like a lot of things I inherited from like my mom or my dad, and I was like, man, like fuck, like, what's up with this? But then I think like doing a lot of the healing work that I've done has also been like realizing that they're also living their first experience, and that a lot of the things were actually like maybe from their parents or from their upbringing that they didn't even have control over passing down to us. And I think as being like stewards of the impact of the money that we have now, I think it's truly like our obligation to dig deep and figure those things out so that we don't continue passing them down. My grandma just passed away recently, and she definitely brought a lot of trauma. She had a really hard upbringing, then was schizophrenic, was also addicted to a lot of like amphetamines her whole life. And so my dad really grew up with like a crazy upbringing. And with that, I recently, through her passing, realized that so much of the trauma that I hold on to from my dad, literally he's still holding on to from his childhood with his mom. And I think that realizing those things and being able to say, wow, like I'm going to make a conscious decision to live differently, to raise my kids differently, to treat my wife differently. I think that those are like the biggest changes that we, even as men, can make, because I grew up in a very like aggressive household. There was a lot of like fighting. My dad and stepmom fought a lot, and I grew up with like physicality being like a real thing. And that when I was in high school and started drinking, I was like down, like, you guys want to go fight somebody tonight? Like it was this, I think, display of anger and rage, but that was like really coming from like, I don't know, wanting attention or something like that. So Becca and I started dating at 15. And for the first couple of years, like that was, I think, in full effect. We would like be at parties, and like any chance, like somebody's like looking or touching, it's like why are you even like that? Right.
Yeah.
But through that, I really learned that my reaction commonly became out of aggression, like even for commonly like no reason. And that translated even years further into Becca being like, you got to go to anger management. You got to go to therapy for like years. And I'm like, fuck that shit. Like, I'm just going to keep on being angry. But that didn't work for me, especially once we and she started finding success, because we would still be in those times of like celebration or wins or this. And I'd be like, fuck that. Like, I'm still angry. And I genuinely, it took me years to get through that shit. And like, it was uncomfortable to get through it. But I feel like learning how to, as men, like regulate and control our emotions plays such a role in our marriage and in business, because being the more like masculine figure in business, if you're able to remove that emotion, you're able to disattach just a tiny bit, which I think has been really helpful for me growing brands. And I'm curious for you as well, like when you have those days where you're spending $1 million, you're selling 50,000 rugs, do you feel like you're able to do that in some ways by emotionally detaching from what it actually is and just seeing, I'm trying to achieve this result, this is how I'm going to do it, and just kind of like removing the emotion from it, the reaction.
Yeah, I think it's super, super important. And I can't even point, I don't know if a moment, and I think maybe at Ruggable, I just, it happened like, it's kind of like when you know, what do they say when you put a frog in cold water and then you heat it up, it has no idea that's getting hot. Like I
Yep.
feel like that was me with the ad spend. It was just like nothing, and then all of a sudden I'm doing $300,000 days in ad spend, and so I was numb to it. And so I think that kind of trained me to just be emotionless. And
Yeah.
now I think it's kind of like what my clients love about me, because like I have no fear, I have
Mm-hmm.
no problem and no doubts when spending money, and there's no emotion. Literally, there's no emotion in it at all. I just
Yeah.
think very logical about it. I don't really the emotions I get more or less like, or like I mentioned, when people quit their jobs, or that,
Yeah.
it's like the actual like monetary stuff with clients. I mean, yeah, I love it. It makes
Yeah.
me feel like I'm the best and unstoppable. But those are the emotions. I don't really actually have like any fear or any of those emotions anymore at all when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
advertising.
Where do you, out of all of this like work that you've done, where does this all come into like your relationship with Tay and her like being kind of like this profitable husband in creating success, creating opportunity for your family? What do you envision? What do you envision like turning all of this into?
Yeah, so she was there, like our first like official date was actually like official. We had met before, but I took her out um like Nobu and Malibu, literally across the bay
Nice.
here. Or not Nobu and Newport.
Okay.
And that was when I had first, it was 2019, I had first gotten my first equity grant from Ruggable. I just signed that day. I was like, we're gonna go celebrate. And
Okay.
so she's seen me from the beginning of like not really having money,
Uh-huh.
starting to make more money, and then me having this drive to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of growing where like I messaged to her from the early, like, hey, like this is the path I'm on.
Mm,
This is a never ending path, and like
yeah.
you're gonna have to grow with me. And like the stuff, the friends that might you be hanging out with, stuff that you're into, like it just might not be, you know, might not work with the lifestyle. Like I'm gonna be, working long hours. Like, are you okay with this? Like this is the direction I'm headed in. And so she, we both had to grow a lot, and she, I would say, obviously joined me in that
Yeah.
journey of growth where like, she, it took her a while to understand like what it actually takes to build a successful business. It's not the 9 to 5 hours,
Yeah.
right? Like there's those, there's some early in the early days, there's I would say weeks that I work literally every day, 12 to 15 hours a day. No
Yeah.
one knew it. She was the only one who knew.
Yeah.
Then we'd go to functions or family things, and you know, I would always act like everything was normal. I
Yeah.
was living a normal life, but she was kind of in the background, like knowing how much work I was putting in, supporting me,
Yeah.
and really both of us is like talking with each other, like, hey, this is this is the path I'm going to take. Like, are you okay being in this role? Which I think
Yeah.
is super important, of like being on the same page about like what role each is going to play in the relationship. and
Yeah.
and she became like, yeah, I want to just support you, whatever you need I will do for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that has really allowed me to just step into, this role, this new path as an entrepreneur, and like be so confident in everything I'm doing, 'cause knowing that she's going to support me and has my back
Yeah.
in her role as a wife. So
I love that. Do you feel like she has had an easier or more difficult time adapting to the change than you?
I think she's probably had a tougher time,
Okay.
just because I've always been, even when I was at Ruggable, before I even was an entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
like I was like Ruggable being scaling from 1 million to 500 million a year. Like I acted like that was my company.
Right.
Like it was my thing. And I worked probably 80 to 100 hours a week. The first year I was there, that was before I was even in UTE. I was working every single day, all day, adjusting budgets. I would be up late every single night. And that was probably the unknown thing. No one really knew
Yeah.
that, how deep I was into that, and why, like that run we had
Yeah.
wasn't just like chance. Like I was like all in.
Yeah.
And so I had to kind of develop that work ethic and that habit of like just doing whatever it would take. And then so I didn't think, and for we didn't live together for a while, so she didn't really know what I was up to. And then all of
Okay.
a sudden COVID happened, and then she saw how I kind of worked, and that was kind of the big adaptation to be like, oh, like you're not like a normal dude who starts at one time and then he's
Yeah.
done for the weekend. It's
Sure.
like you're an everyday type of guy. Like if I don't tell you to stop working, you're gonna keep, you're gonna, if I don't schedule time with you, you're gonna, or if you don't schedule time with me, you're just gonna keep going, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the big adaptation where, and I had to also take a step back and grow up a bit and like mature and really start carving out that time for us as a relationship as well, because again, you know how it is as a business owner.
Yeah.
Like there's always something.
There's always something.
There's always something to do. You can always be doing something, and so you have to be really intentional about your time, about and what you're doing all this for. It's like,
Yeah.
because you're working for the freedom, right? And so,
Right.
but so that's a big one where she helps me like, hey, like let's enjoy this. Let's
Yeah.
enjoy this newfound freedom where like you don't have to work right now
All
if
the
you don't
time,
want.
yeah.
You're the boss, so you know what I mean. So
I'm so fascinated by that because I think that a lot of people on the podcast, a lot of people that are listening, and even my experience having coached a lot of women is that I typically see the opposite. In that from my perspective, women typically have an easier time growing and evolving that like really rapid adaptation. And so I'm fascinated and I'm curious, like what it was. You obviously have a lot of drive inside of you. I'm curious though, because I feel like as women, there is this innate creativity and adaptability, especially like even just when you think about like biologically of being able to have children, adapting into being a mother. I am fascinated by that it has taken Tay a little bit longer to adapt than you. And I'm curious where you feel like you see taking the relationship, because she has been working, right? Is she going to stay at home once she has a baby? Kind of where do you see like your relationship actually going with that?
well, yeah. Well, I think my journey actually did have an impact on her where she was working she's a writer for, beauty fashion magazines. And so she was working at a publication during going into COVID, still during COVID. And then, I basically encouraged her to, or I think I kind of just rubbed off on her. I was like,
Yeah.
like you can do this freelance, like you don't need a company. And so I think that was, again, I was ahead of her and she kind of, and I supported her too. I was like, you like, fuck this company, like just do it on your own. Like I'll support you.
Yeah.
Like, and so I think that kind of rubbed off on her a bit. But
Do you see taking it together like in the future, or do you see her becoming a stay-at-home mom? Do you see her writing and helping your e-com clients? Like, is there overlap? Where do you see kind of like your guys' careers and your guys', if you're on this huge fucking mission to build this empire, where does Tay fall into that?
yeah, so initially I was trying to like she's a writer, right? I could use her. She's copywriting, there's so many things I could use her for, but then I kind of realized, at least for us, like I'm not, like I said, going back to the emotionless side, if you work with me on business, like I'm just pure, like, let's get results. Right. And so the way I know her, like she's a little bit more sensitive and I just think it wouldn't, not saying it couldn't work. I just think it's not what we should do with our relationship. So I think she's gonna be a mother, like, and she's gonna write if she wants to write, and I think she still will, just because she loves to write. But that's it's been her dream just to be a mom, and the fact that we're blessed to be able to let her just do that is a blessing. And so yeah, we've kept it separate. Like there's many times where we almost kind of like had her be my executive assistant or all that sort of stuff. But I just think I just wanted to keep it separate, and just because I thought it would negatively, not me, not her, like I would be probably not the best person to her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm the only guy on a female team, so I know how it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I love that. And I think that the whole point of this podcast, Profitable Husband, I think it actually, I created it with the ethos of talking to a lot of men that are supporting their wives, but I actually love that it has two meanings, because being a profitable husband can be profit on the wife's brand and can also easily be profit on your brand to be a profitable husband to support your wife, which it sounds like it's kind of the angle that you're going with, Tay. I'm curious, now that you have gone from 0 to 100, you've gone from 100K to over $1 million in your business. You're clearly on track to continue growing, whether it's your agency, coaching, equity and brands, things like that. Where do you want to take all of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I have like a overarching vision. So I have an agency called We Are the Select, which the vehicle right now just to make money with it is advertising, right? The ultimate goal with that would be like a luxury fashion house. Like I want to eventually turn it into design house where I full collections of clothing, all that sort of stuff. That's my ultimate dream, but you need a lot of money to do that.
It's a different dream.
Exactly. Yeah. And then but Meta Ads at Scale, which was kind of the spawn of people DMing me on Twitter being like, "Hey, can you help me run your ads?" I'm like, "No, you're too small." So the coaching program where I help, e-com brands at any stage of growth scale profitably, that I think is going to become a global phenomenon. The plan is to be the #1 Meta Ads coaching program in the world. I think we're already the best. I think we have a lot of work, like the best meaning like we help the most brands and can help. But I think building that into like a behemoth of an education and coaching company, that's the goal of that, is to be the biggest in the world and help. My goal is at least 100 brands doing 10 million or more in revenue a year coming from my program. So billion in revenue a year by the end of 2027 is the goal for Meta Ads at Scale.
Okay.
So yeah, those are my two. I mean, it's like weird, this thing. I kind of do all this because I want to own a luxury fashion brand.
So you're looking to like essentially monetize any opportunity you can to self-fund a fashion line.
Yeah.
What would the fashion line be like?
Really Newport Beach, California cool. Like We Are the Select right now, like our logo, it's We Are the Select Newport Beach, California. There's one of my good friends who's a designer, probably one of the most talented designers I know. He kind of made my logo for me, and it's very, there's no brand that like owns Newport Beach, like pays homage to it, that reps it, right? And so like I want to build a fashion house that's reflective of literally where we're at right now. This California cool lifestyle, but still fashionable, right? And like everyone like Hedy Slimane, who did Saint Laurent, Celine, right? All these, he's stolen California and brought it to Paris, and even done full collections like based on LA, right? Mm-hmm. So I just felt like I've always been this person that grew up in the beach, loved surfing, but I've also just like dreamed of, I love fashion. I love just the way clothes make you feel, right? Yep. And that's depending on, if I don't wear the right clothes, I don't feel good, and then I have a bad day. Yeah. And so like I just love clothing that much, and so I want to kind of like build something here that can be be used around the world. Right?
I love that. So. What are to end this out or to finish things up, what are a couple of things inside of you and Tay's relationship that might be surprising to people, of that like you do this and people might think Tay does that, or like what are a couple of fun things in your guys' relationship that people might not know?
Michael, it's literally like the trad wife like trend, but like Tay really like loves cooking. Okay. And like we had early on in a relationship, I was like, hey, like because when we first moved in together, it was kind of like the split bills thing. Okay. And then I kind of was like, you know what, like I'll just pay for everything if you do all the dishes and you cook food. Okay. And she's like, that's fine. And so like that kind of became the thing where like she just got to keep all her money, and then like whatever she made, she just gets to keep. She would keep. Yeah. But she was like totally cool with just like
housewifing it.
Yeah, not in a bad way. It was like she doesn't like, whenever I would do the dishes, it would take me forever. It would just like, and she wanted to hang out with me. And she's like, why are you taking so? So it was just like I ended up, but it was kind of like a bottleneck in a lot of ways. Yeah. So yeah, like that's kind of our relationship, where she loves to cook, and like she cooks me like insane meals almost every night a week. Like she's like a fantastic, like just natural chef. Yeah. And so that's kind of one of the things that's like very traditional thing.
Yep.
The other things in our relationship, we used to work out together all the time. But now we don't anymore. I kind of like with the work thing, I became a little bit too like intense. I was like, you need to be doing this, like, and like, so that's one thing where like, you know, that kind of, I guess, was a reflection of why we probably shouldn't work together. Was like I was like training her in that regard. But I think if there's anything else, I think.
Yeah, I love those, and it's so cool to hear those sides too, because I feel like I hold some of those things in Becca and I's relationship. Like I do the dishes, things like that. I like to cook more, partially because I am OCD about cleaning, and I'm like, I'm not fucking working tomorrow if the shit's not clean. But at the same time, it's so funny because we just went on our snowboard trip. We were in Montana, and I was doing the dishes, but I also noticed that Tay was doing a lot of dishes. And I also am kind of a lazy sack of shit when it comes to doing the dishes, and that I'll do them, but I'll like leave them or like whatever. And I remember the first night of the snowboarding trip, Tay had done the dishes, and I came in and she had also put away the dishes. And I was like, man, this is a proper woman. Like, this is great, because I always half-ass it. I love it.
That's so funny.
Well, thank you for coming onto the podcast, bro. I'm super excited. And I know a lot of people that are listening to this have thought about running ads, how to scale their wives' brands, how to scale their own brand. And I think that you bring a really fun and approachable way of scaling really big. So thank you for doing this.
Of course.
Where can people learn more about you, tune into what you're doing? Maybe it's a husband thinking, wow, I have a wife's brand, I'm trying to scale it. How can people tune into you?
Yes, you can find me on YouTube. Just search Mason Littlejohn. I'm newer on YouTube, but that's where, like, if you want to learn in-depth, free, like, information on meta ads, like, I go really deep on there. I've been filming about 4 videos a month now, so check me out there. On Instagram, meta ads at meta ads at scale. You can find us on there, and then also on Twitter. Twitter's where I'm most active, or X.
Okay.
I just search Mason Littlejohn, or my handle's at We Are The Select.
Okay.
And also, Instagram at Mason. I have at Mason. I spent so much money on meta ads that they gave me at Mason as my handle. So
nice.
Well,
thank you, bro. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here. Appreciate it.
That's it for today's episode of the Profitable Husband Podcast. If you're ready to step up, support your wife, and build real wealth together, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. For more strategies on business, marketing, and becoming the strongest leader in your household, follow me on Instagram at WillowKai. And if today's episode hit home, share it with another man who needs to hear this. We're building a movement, one profitable husband at a time. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next episode.